Hello, 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 leavers, believers, and the Easter Bunny. Welcome to Leaving Hillsong. It is Easter weekend, so I'm going to make this super brief because I'm away researching our next story. I've got to get back to it. My name is Tanya, and I'm here to wish you a happy long weekend. Gee, that Easter weekend can drag on, can't it? Lucky you've got a little bit of relief in the monotony of, does it rain where you are? I always find Easter to be so rainy. But I did want you to have part 2 of Mine is the Kingdom with David Hardacre, an Australian journalist who has just released this new book, Mine is the Kingdom, The Rise and Fall of Brian Houston, which is an intricate look at the many pathways that a charity and a church, sometimes hard to tell the difference, can manoeuvre itself around finances, nationally and internationally, and political power as well. And I chatted with David a week ago. Part 1 is compulsory listening if you want to do part 2. Please grab that. And please, with all this talk of death and stones being rolled away, and I don't know, it's been a long time, but just go that little bit easier on yourself. Be kind to you and the people around you. I'm keeping this super brief so you can get back to story hunting and food hunting. Just keep leaving Hillsong. Keep on leaving Hillsong. And we'll talk very soon. Stay safe. Bye.
One of my most jaw-dropping moments, I'm amazed that a bigger fuss wasn't made of this, and you do talk about it in the book, is Morrison electing himself into 5 ministries. After dark, after everybody went home, he's swearing himself into what? I mean, and yet it's normal. It would be normal thinking in a Pentecostal circle. You're entitled. Take what's God's. You know what I mean? Take it for God.
So what you just said there is very illuminating, eye-opening, amazing, right? Because I'm dealing with the secular media, the reaction I get is, well, oh, geez, how do you know that? How do you know Scott Morrison was acting, as God's anointed?
Oh,
when he secretly grabbed these ministries. And for those who don't know this story, Scott Morrison is Prime Minister of Australia. He's got a cabinet with 12, 14 other people in there. Each of them are a minister in charge of certain functions of government. And just quietly and without telling the public, or even in some cases the ministers, Scott Morrison had himself sworn in to be a minister, to hold 5 ministries without telling anybody. I mean,
never been done before in the
never been done, unprecedented. And then when it became public, no one could explain it, not even Scott Morrison.
Or sort of there weren't really any kind of consequences, was there?
Well, I happen to agree with you, yes. So it's the way which you automatically say, well, what's God's is, of course it's there because you're God's anointed. Australia's political reporters cannot get their heads around it.
Really? And it brings me back to a line actually earlier on in the book where quite early on you say, world of Pentecostalism is extraordinary. Satan is real. There's spiritual battles going on.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, no, it's not. That's normal. That's nothing. It's not. And then I'm thinking the word extraordinary.
That's not even remarkable.
But that's not that you have to go and do an exorcism or lay hands on someone. It's it's nothing. It's take the garbage out and wrestle not with principalities and powers and have faith.
So there you go, right?
So that would be nothing to Morrison. He's there. He's been divinely appointed. You could almost imagine he'd think, what if I don't take all of this for God? It's psychosis. It's mental illness, I think,
Yeah.
where do you draw
Well,
the line? But
yeah. Yeah. We're
grandiosity, delusions of all kinds, but
yes. Yeah. Look,
with a passion.
I'm so glad you've said this because this is what I discovered.
Any
I mentioned earlier a woman that became a really good friend from over in West Australia who said, "Well, what? Yeah, what? You're surprised? You're surprised that Morrison's saying these things and doing these things? Not a big deal at all."
it is the disappointing part is that, and like whether people don't want to look at it or
Yes.
too horrifying to think that that could be the extent to
Yeah.
which religion goes.
Yeah. That's amazing, right? And so I think as I came to understand that this was, as you say, oh, big deal, of course, it doesn't doesn't mean anything. Uh, then you start to see, wow, a whole lot of different signs of this being everyday part of it, of Scott Morrison's everyday life.
Yep.
You might be familiar with the story of, when he was running for election in 2019 and it wasn't going well. Everybody thought that he would not win. Walks into the photo gallery of Pen Duncan, who's a Christian. He sees a dirty big photo of a soaring eagle. And, for most people, that's just a dirty big photo of a soaring eagle. But for Scott, it was actually, God speaking to him.
And I mean, and that's a sign of psychosis. The TV's talking to me. It's quite literally. I mean, a woman a couple of weeks ago from Mercy Ministries talked to the court decisions of reference that, it's a message to me.
To me, that's it. That's to me. It's that.
Yes. And yet who can blame him? And this is what fascinates me because Brian and his ilk have taught people that they are the center of the universe.
Yeah.
They're going to change the world.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, surprise you as you watch the evolution of Scott Morrison, under that kind of the lens of the Houston empire, how
Yes.
you can get someone that'll end up as a Scott Morrison.
Well, totally right. Right. And so, when you win the miracle election, so you got anointed. It's pretty amazing.
I'd hate to be that miracle baby, though. I mean, that kind of stuff. Can you imagine Presta? Your mother and I waited 12 years. God intervened.
Yeah. So that's the power of doing the Hillsong story. I mean, the book is called Mine is the Kingdom, which is, the rise and fall of Brian Houston and the Hillsong Church, but it does go in all sorts of different directions, as you think you pointed out earlier on, and trying to bring those together. But I do want to really, again, acknowledge, if I haven't done it clearly enough, just the incredible, generous, and good-hearted and passionate input from a whole group of people, some of whom and and all for the right reasons. That's just one of the great things that I have, but one of the I have as a journalist is to be able to meet people of really good intent who will blow the whistle and put themselves on the line. It's quite something.
And it's sort of very thick irony somewhere in there as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Out against the church can sometimes end up being the more virtuous road or something.
Well, right. But I think really what's remarkable is that ultimately, the church has sort of ended up, or is ending up, I think, turning to a place which, partly is what has been pointed out before, where it should be. And yet those people who helped make that change remain demonized or remain ostracized. I mean,
well, and I don't know anywhere where whistleblowers kind of their employment chances rise or
no, completely right.
Overall, it's interesting. Hey, I did want to ask you, what did you feel is what is the appeal of this movement and why did it kind of take off so particularly well in this country? I mean, I think that whole northwestern corner that you talk about, that it was a great time in history. It was in Australia, it's time for growth, good.
Obviously, that message of, the more you give, the more you'll get. That, in a way, to paraphrase it, if any money that you give to the church is actually almost like an investment, then you'll get a return on that investment. And that's a whole different way of looking at it, isn't it, to traditional ways of looking at religion. And I don't think it chimed with a kind of a neoliberal bent in our societies. So I think they're totally interwoven. And the idea that, we saw in the 80s, 90s, the idea really started to take place that it was a good thing to be wealthy. It was actually a good thing. You should aspire to it. You shouldn't think it's a dirty word, being wealthy. And so to wrap that up with religion is something of a stroke of genius.
Because
But
Australia has traditionally not been that kind of
well, no,
ostentation ways
it
of
has not.
wealth.
But I would say too, Tanya, there is one more straightforward, I guess, reason in that I think people are looking for meaning. People are looking, and you're growing up in these newly developed suburbs, like, well, as you say, the northwest parts of Sydney, where Hillsong took root. And what are they? What are they? There's shopping malls, there's cafes, it's arid. It's just arid.
And paying off a mortgage for 30 years.
Paying off a mortgage, that's right. Where's your meaning? Where is your meaning? And people do want meaning. I've wanted meaning in my life. Who hasn't? And so, if you have this really welcoming, warm, entertaining, embracing entity up the road, rather than the cold, we all know the old-fashioned churches where when God, we know what happened with Catholic priests, but just the coldness of the Anglican tradition. And this is here, it's embracing, and you get love bombed when you turn up, and there's a place for you. It's wonderful. So why wouldn't you? And I think that's it. There's my explanation for why I took off.
Then I remember asking a Swedish friend of mine, like, why would the Swedes be interested in those messages? Apparently the Swedes, it's dark there a lot of the time, but they're looking for life meaning as well.
And we are as human beings,
Having studied it, what do we do? Because like I said to you before, you seem a bit incredulous yourself through the book at the kind of the limitlessness, ever-ending universe of tax-free kind of opportunities.
Yes.
Well, for Australian businesses, I mean, the most that example where they want to send $15,000 to Romania.
Oh yeah.
Natalie Moses points out to them that it's illegal, so they just send it to America and send it to Romania. What is the hope for the taxpayer that gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get to work so that these guys can what?
Well, that's right. That's right. And
what do we do? Got any answers?
Well, what in Australia, the body that regulates charities just has to have more power. And the number of loopholes available to the religious charities is pretty gobsmacking. There is a form of charity called the basic religious charity, which is for all intents and purposes, a black hole in terms of the regulator. The regulator just can't really do anything about it, what goes on there. There's a lot they can't track. So if you've got an entity which is made up of a myriad of charities, some are in Australia, many are in America, some in the US, some in Europe, there's money flowing throughout. And, you've got that problem of multi-jurisdictions, which is always a problem. But B, you have in law in Australia, huge limits placed on the regulator, one of which is they can't even confirm they're investigating a charity. Right? So you wouldn't even know that Hillsong had been investigated by the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission if Hillsong hadn't said it.
But that's right. Yeah, they
said
that out. Often wonder about these moments when perhaps they had broken the laws and then they realized there's going to be no one's coming. There's not going to be enough. Do what you want, boys. Let's go.
Well, Indeed.
Horrifying.
And there is pretty much almost a 0% rate of the regulator, in fact, making anything happen. Pretty much a 0%. They're understaffed for a start. That's the main thing. But then, they just don't have the powers. So, yeah. I mean, and look, friends in high places. Now, it's germane we talk about this because there was a point at which the charities regulator was subject to a review, a statutory review by the government, and looked at the regulator's powers. And guess what? The statutory review said these things called basic religious charities, they probably shouldn't exist. So they made that recommendation. It goes to government. Well, guess who was Prime Minister when it landed on the desk? Look. So now look, not saying anything here, but no action was taken. And, these things matter. These things do matter.
It's depressing. I have a lawyer that keeps me in line with the pod called Nick, and Nick was telling me that the tax office, the Australian tax office, doesn't have the resources to investigate companies like this, so they go around,
Correct.
have to go bankrupt.
Correct. It's like a lot of things. There's actually a really good reason to have tax breaks for little religions. There's actually a very good reason for that. But it's just that then, something really big comes along like Hillsong, which has the legal power and the legal brain to be able to make maximum use of it and stay within the law, I want to underline. Stay within the law, pretty much, I think. So the system, needs to be addressed. It is just too hard for the major parties to address because they don't want to alienate any religious vote.
Well, and the kind of automatic conclusion, or you would think you wouldn't have to be dodging dodgy churches all the time.
That's right. Yeah, you said it. I mean, if you can't count on a church to be honest and straightforward,
that's why they're getting the tax breaks, because they're the good guys.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, and there was a pretty critical High Court decision in the early 2000s, 2005, 2006, which said that if you conduct business and you make money out of that as a charitable entity, a church in this case, you don't have to pay tax if the ultimate purpose of what you're doing is the promotion of religion. So, pretty much there's a lot of stuff that falls under that umbrella.
Well, and then, why do we prioritize? Why do we prioritize and make religion? Why is that why we want to thread that around? But that's me.
Well, then now you're opening up a whole new podcast.
I'll just have a look at these questions I asked our listeners if they had any questions for you. There's only a couple. Let me say.
Yep.
Well, here we go. Just reading I'm just as much a boomer as the next person here. Damn kids on Instagram. In his opinion, how can this individual still be getting away with daylight robbery or getting away with just about anything at all beyond the laws of decency? I wonder if that's rhetorical in some ways.
It's rhetorical, and I guess if you think that you're accountable to God, well, then you're not really accountable to secular authorities in a big way.
And then if you make yourself God, did Hillsong make the ACC or did the ACC make Hillsong?
Well, that's a good question. Is that a real question?
Well, yeah, it's there. I don't know. That's from the framework. That's from Jake, our friend on the framework.
I don't know about that. I mean, they dominated it, right? I mean, Brian was head of the Australian entity while being head of Hillsong and the head of another thing too.
Might be a trick question.
Influence is dramatic in ACC. I think, and Hillsong's influence in terms of the governance model has been dramatic across Pentecostal churches in the country. And blame New Zealand. I mean, they came over from New Zealand.
Forksy says, why the media focus on the sexual stuff when the bigger story is the everyday abuse culture of coercive control, high-pressure churches? Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really good point. And it's not, look, I don't, certainly for me, it's not either or. A large chunk of the unraveling of Hillsong is about, ultimately coercive control from the top and people getting sick of it. And, kind of calling it out, standing up, ultimately being the reason it all becomes public and unravels. A big reason is Hillsong lost, they couldn't control the narrative anymore.
And that's an exciting part of the book as well. It is so factual, but there's a lot of your dry
Ah,
criticism in the background. Hillsong accountability, I think they're very funny here. Can anyone explain why that rat's tail made a short-lived appearance? Why did David spend so much time on Hillsong? Why did Brian declare he's not an alcoholic, like concealing a high-range DUI? 12 months. It's Angela Mercy says, just one user saying that you just finished the book. You've done a terrific job. David's done a terrific job. Any closing comments? If there's anything you want, anything that struck you that you want to throw in there or say to the people who,
yeah, look, again, Tanya, I'm blown away by the people who worked in the background for the good. That, but you are one of those people, right? And look, this is the thing I find in journalism when you're investigating sort of, tough or dark stories, there is always the good. There is always the good. And that's, it's gratifying and it's sort of human. It's a very good thing about humans that they strive
I love that.
for good.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
So look, I want to thank you.
Love that. No, thank you. That's a wonderful place to end as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Been a great
Well, today, but thank you for doing this work because people will see when they read mine is The Kingdom by David Hardaker. You will see the links she's gone to document because nobody does and nobody is looking and they get away with it.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You are right. I very much appreciate you saying it.
Yeah, they think, oh, no one will ever be able to follow us down those.
Oh, right. Yeah. Lovely.
All right. Terrific. Well,
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
much appreciate that. Thank you, Tanya.
Bye.